Hey guys, this is my 500th video, so I'm recording in front of the collection today. I went to the library today and I picked up a book which is like poems about the Bible and God and spirituality. And as an esoterica enjoyer myself, I'm pretty interested in that. So I looked through it and there's one poem about the Bible and how no book ever made by any person could ever be as good as it. In fact, everything that you think is good is either a commentary or a caricature of the Bible. Now, when people ask me my favorite book, I usually point to this one, Diary of a Wimpy Kid. You know, like many people my age, it was a big part of my childhood. I have most of the books that came out, at least the ones when I was in elementary school. So I got to thinking, is this a commentary or a caricature of the Bible? It's a caricature. This is a biblical story. And let me explain. The stories in this, you know, you get one day in the life of Greg Heffley, and then it'll say, you know, a title like Sunday, and then boom, just completely different idea. You know, it can be hard to find the lesson at the end of each thing. So, for example, there's a story about Greg meeting Rowley. He just kind of sees Rowley on his door, thinks he's a loser, and then they're best friends, and he appears in the other books. There are times when he has a falling out with Rowley, and then Greg doesn't really learn anything, and it just moves on. And the Bible is kind of structured in a way that you hear a story about one guy, like, let's say Abraham, and he's asked to do something crazy, like sacrifice his son. And then, nope, God says, wait, no, you don't have to sacrifice your son, but it's cool that you would do that for me. And then the next day, the next generation after that, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, you know, and it just keeps going on kind of episodically. Just like the Bible, the Diary of a Wimpy Kid has a bunch of installments. Now, one thing I find really interesting about this story in relation to the Bible is that the Bible is told from the perspective of the people in it. You know, you kind of really feel their pain, the tough choices they have to make, you know, whether they were slaves in Egypt or people who decided to wrestle an angel for some reason. In this, the characters seem kind of ridiculous. You know, Greg's a bit of a sociopath. The problems are very middle school, which is the difference between Diary of a Wimpy Kid and the Bible. This is the story of humans from the perspective of someone who does not have to deal with these issues. So imagine now, if you read the Bible from God's perspective, what would it look like? Probably a bunch of idiots squabbling over very relatively normal stuff. You know, like, why would they go off and build a golden calf when, like, God is right there? Doesn't make sense, just like how a lot of these things in this book doesn't make sense. So, I would go as far as to say, and stay with me here, that the Diary of a Wimpy Kid is what the Bible would look like if it was written from God's perspective. Everyone's a little bit stupid, they don't learn the things they should, and that's not to say that the characters in the Bible are ridiculous or the problems aren't real. They really are, and they apply to everyday life even today, and that's how it was designed, and that's part of what the poem says, and why no other book can ever rise to its level. But it's interesting to see these same very human problems applied to a middle schooler in sort of the modern age. In the Bible, there's a very clear sense of like good and evil. The evil people are like struck by lightning and turned into pillars of salt, and the good people aren't. That's the reward for being good. In Diary of a Wimpy Kid, Greg does things like, you know, there's this school play and he throws an apple at Patty, but he is not struck by lightning. In fact, it doesn't really seem like he's punished at all for all the pretty bad stuff he does, like accusing another kid of being Bubby when it's clearly Greg himself. So, what do we make of this? What is the punishment that Greg and these characters receive for doing all this bad stuff? Well, it's not entirely visible. Maybe it's just living with it and developing as a person who thinks it's okay to get away with these things. That in itself is the punishment. So the Bible takes this concept and plays it up a lot. If you dress like a tree and throw an apple at someone, you will be killed right away. But in real life, it doesn't really work like that. And the Bible plays with time in a really weird way. We can think of these things like, being struck by lightning as actually being a metaphor for living a bad life and having to deal with the bad things you did and then dying. That's how it plays out in this book. Greg seems to be eternally stuck in middle school, which in a way, in my opinion, is a worse punishment than anyone could ever dream of. So there is still a sense of right and wrong. And reading this book and the ones that come after it, you think Greg gets away with everything. But if you look at it from the reader's perspective, this guy is always stuck in middle school. He's going to be in middle school for the rest of time, however long Jeff Kinney keeps writing these. So there is biblical punishment in Diary of a Wimpy Kid. I don't have a copy of the Bible on hand, so I'm just going to use this book, The Way of the Upright, to represent it. It's an old-looking book. It's really like a commentary on the Bible, but we can use it for prop purposes. In the biblical story of Joseph, which Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, the movie musical, has appeared in my videos many times, and many of you have pointed it out. There is a kid named Joseph who is loved by his father, and his 11 other brothers do not receive anywhere near that kind of love. So Joseph is very big-headed, and for this he is sold into slavery, which is bad. But then at the end he gets to be the ruler of, look, Egypt. That's Indiana Jones, like I said. Yeah, so it's a lot like Greg's story in a way, in that this kid is kind of a, let's say, insensitive to the people around him. And it seems like he wins in the end, just like he would in a Diary of a Wimpy Kid book. But consolidating in Egypt is what brought his family there. And his family had kids, and they all had kids who were eventually enslaved by the Pharaoh, leading to the Exodus story. So once again, the punishment is not immediately visible. And I'm not saying Joseph is deserving of punishment. I love Joseph. I love his Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. But moving to Egypt had the same kind of long-term consequences that being a wiener in middle school would have on a person, right? You develop in a way that is not as good as you would have if you had just been nice and caring in the place you were born. The last thing I'd like to touch on is the general structure. So, like I said, there are a lot of books of this, a lot of books of this. And each story is kind of just a little snapshot into a situation that we might encounter in our day-to-day lives. Whether it's having to leave your home because everyone's evil, or going to a middle school where everyone's evil. These are the same kind of situations that put characters in a place where they have to make choices, where there is a kind of clear right and wrong answer, but it can vary. When you're in that story, the right answer does not always seem clear. It's a lot like life in a way. I think that's why this guy who wrote this poem spoke so highly of this book. It's not a linear odyssey or an adventure like, what's this other book I have? Like The Hobbit. And it's not like a narrative about how, all humans are actually evil like Blood Meridian. It is a lot more realistic than that. And, I think that's what makes Diary of a Wimpy Kid so endearing. There's so many books because it never has to end. There are always more situations, more choices where the decisions you make weigh on you. And the lesson of the Bible is that certain decisions are better than others. The lesson of Diary of a Wimpy Kid is that making the bad ones is not good. A lot of people are saying Greg is a sociopath now after revisiting these books. So, that's my argument. Take it or leave it. Diary of a Wimpy Kid. The Diary of a Man versus the Diary of Man. Thank you for watching my 500th video. Have a great day, guys.
2 hours later, people were still subscribing to Joeybar.
You're still doing it.
Yeah, I'm still doing it. I can't stop.